When I'm out running, for example, I just have my phone with me and it just goes straight to my cochlear implants.
And now these cochlear implants also have apps. It started with a remote control and then moved into an app, and patients have some autonomy. They can control the levels of the sound, they can control different features, and then for parents with children who have cochlear implants, they can even look at the wear time. It'll beep, their phone will beep if it falls off. And for the longest time, like Matilda was saying, was body-worn processors, and now it's up to the ear.
Hello, this is Anthony Effinger. I'm the host of the Think Neuro podcast at Pacific Neuroscience Institute, and today we have two guests. We're going to talk about cochlear implants and how that technology is changing and evolving. And with me today are Dr. Becky Lewis and Matilda Tranberg, who is an outreach and patient support specialist here at PNI in the cochlear implant program. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
So glad to have you. Why don't we start? Why don't you each give us a little bio and how you got interested in this field?
I'm Dr. Rebecca Lewis. I am the director of our audiology cochlear implant program. So I trained at Vanderbilt University, and I've worked at most of the big academic medical centers in Los Angeles. And so I have about 20 years of cochlear implant experience already, which is kind of crazy to say. And you know, I feel like it's the best part of my field personally. When I learned about cochlear implants and saw what an impact it makes, and the journey you get to go on with these patients, I was like, sign me up. This is what I want to do. So I work with infants, babies, all the way through older adults. So there's no age limit or, minimum age for a cochlear implant. We work with literally newborns to older adults in their hundreds. So we can get more into that as we go
Certainly.
forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my role.
So tell us just quickly, a cochlear implant is?
So a cochlear implant is a device that has an inside part that gets surgically implanted in the ear and an outside part that communicates with that implant. And it's for individuals who no longer benefit from a hearing aid, or for children who aren't developing speech and language with hearing aids or born completely deaf. And of course, that's the parent's decision on which communication modality they want to choose. But a cochlear implant basically will give you access to sound when a hearing aid doesn't, and potentially give you much better speech understanding than a hearing aid for those individuals.
Yeah, because hearing aids are, my mother has experience with those, and they're hit or miss.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, hearing aids have come a long way, actually. They're really, really incredible technology. But when hearing aids are appropriately fit by an audiologist and verified that they're set correctly, and they're still not helping an individual, then we need to do a more comprehensive evaluation to determine if that patient or that individual is actually a candidate for a cochlear implant. So we know that we're just scratching the surface with cochlear implants right now. We're only seeing about 10% of people who could benefit from a cochlear implant come in and get one. So there's a lot of people like your mom that are potentially suffering out there with hearing aids that aren't, either they're not appropriately fit or they're appropriately fit and they're just not the right technology, and they need to be moved into being monitored by a cochlear implant program.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Matilda.
I kind of can go from there too. I kind of wanted to work in this field because I don't think a lot of people know that much about cochlear implants. And I can first introduce myself. I'm Matilda, and I'm a bilateral cochlear implant user. And I'm originally from Denmark, but I came to the States to play college tennis. But then I decided I wanted to work in the cochlear implant world, since I have 2 cochlear implants and I know how it is to live with it and the challenge and the great things with the device. I can tell from my own experience that it's life-changing. I can communicate with people, and I have a really big family, and I'm happy to just be around with them.
Certainly, yeah. How old were you when you got them?
I don't know if I mentioned, but I was born deaf, and then we didn't have a hearing screening from birth. So my mom found out when I was 2 years old. So I got my first cochlear implant when I was 2 years. And then I traveled to Sweden to get my second implant because we couldn't get 2 at that time, which we are lucky we can do today. So yeah, the first one at 2 years and then the second at 6. So there are difference in my hearing from the right and left side.
Could you only get one because they were scarce, or why was that?
So the rules there, it was just not approved that you could get 2 at that time.
I see.
Yeah.
I can jump in for a second.
Certainly, please, yeah.
So, the technology and the candidacy has dramatically expanded over the last 10 years, 20 years. So when 20 years ago, when Matilda got her cochlear implant, even in the States, the FDA only approved 1 cochlear implant, and the minimum age was 2 years old. So now the minimum age is 6 months old from FDA criteria. We implant even at 5 months old. We can go off label because we know we don't want that length of auditory deprivation, and we can do both at the same time.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
So it was very common to do 1 at a time. And I will say Matilda is so successful. She didn't mention that she speaks multiple languages.
Of course.
And she's so successful.
How many languages? Which languages?
Oh, I mean, I speak Danish, my first language, and English, and then a little Germany and Norwegian and Swedish, I understand.
Oh, that's terrific. Can I ask you, do you remember sort of the day? That must have been amazing.
It was amazing, and my parents, they still to this day say that it is life-changing, and they're so happy they took the decision because it was very hard for them. And that's kind of also why...
Why was it hard? Why was it hard?
It was hard because at that time, it was very new. I was number 80 in Denmark who got cochlear implants, so they didn't really know much about the technology at that time. So my parents, they were like, oh, a little baby, she has to go through a surgery, 2 surgeries, and we didn't know if it's the right thing. They didn't know if I could develop speech, and they didn't know that much at that time. So because they didn't know the outcomes.
You're 24. Okay, so 22 years ago.
Yeah.
That's where we are. Okay, go on.
My second implant, I also don't really remember that much, but I remember the first time I got it on, and it was like, wow, it's a whole new sound in my ear, and it was strange, but over time you just adapt to it and it gets natural. And that's what we also tell our patients, that it takes time, practice, and patience to get there where you want to be. To learn the new sounds in your ear. And she still learned me a lot of things today now when I'm in her clinic, in the clinic. But yeah.
Terrific. And talk about what you do. What's your day-to-day?
So here at PNI, I am doing patient support. So I'm in the clinic with Dr. Lewis, and I'm just trying to create a safe environment for the patients so they feel heard, seen, and they don't feel stupid about stupid questions to ask, and they can see, okay, this is how it looks like, this is how to put it on, all these small things, but kind of make them feel more prepared for their journey. Since it is a very overwhelming process.
It's a journey.
It is, and that's why I kind of wanted to get into this field, since I know a lot of people know a lot about cochlear implants, but when you have it, it's kind of like, I know how it's, I know it's different. I know there are these challenges. I know every morning I have to put it on, every night I have to charge the batteries, all these things. So I'm following up with patients, and when they are having appointments with her, I follow up with them after about things they have to remember.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect.
And then I do some patient events as well.
Okay. And with like groups of people and saying, I mean, who better to do that, right? I mean,
yeah, I'm actually doing a little in the 20s and 30s. In my age, we are like a big group of people now meeting.
Is that right?
With cochlear implants. So back home in Denmark, I didn't have one friend with cochlear implants. So it's a very new world for me too, which is amazing. I love it. Yeah.
Every time a patient comes into the office that I've been seeing that's in their 20s or 30s, Matilda is so good about snatching them up for the group. And it's really nice because a lot of them don't have a lot of friends that have cochlear implants. There's a lot of support for families and children with cochlear implants. And there's a group called Hearing Loss Association of America, HLAA, which is great. And if you go to those meetings, it's really dominated by usually, middle-aged or older patients. And so for 20s and 30 years old, they don't really have any group to identify with. So Matilda's creating a space for them that's fun, and they can talk about things that they can relate to. So
that's
great.
Terrific.
Yeah.
I think when we've spoken before, you've talked about, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you put a cochlear implant into a young child, you see their eyes light up. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah. So it's a very special, fun part of my job. With babies, when they get their cochlear implant activated for the first time, there's a variety of different responses. Usually it's crying.
Is that right?
Yeah, because it's something new and they're a little bit scared.
Because they've been hearing really nothing.
They've been hearing nothing. But I will say this, with children, I set things very conservatively at first, because the goal is acceptance. The goal is not for them to walk out the door hearing everything. With adults, I push them really fast because they can tell me what they're hearing. And even then, I push it a little bit further so they can get to their goals faster.
In the settings.
In their mapping or their settings.
Okay.
So with children, we make these progressively louder programs. These maps is what they're called, because it's electrically mapping out the dynamic range of hearing, so that soft sounds are soft, medium sounds are medium, and loud sounds are loud across the frequency spectrum. So for children, we set it really conservatively at first so that they can accept it. They don't get scared and try to pull them off. And then, we do have some of those activations, and I think we even have one on our website of the little girl named Sienna, and she had a wonderful activation where she, her eyes lit up and she was smiling, or they look at their parent for the first time. Even if they're crying, they turn to sound and everybody's weeping, and it's really special. And with children, it's really incredible to be part of that journey. It takes longer, obviously, but they start meeting their language milestones, the world opens up, all these possibilities and opportunities. But with children, I want to also mention that when children are born deaf, we give them all of the options. So, the deaf community and using ASL is totally a beautiful language and culture to be a part of. But most children who are born with profound hearing loss are born to hearing parents. And just like parents choose what religion their child has or, what they eat, a lot of parents want them to communicate the same way that they do. So sometimes they'll choose both languages. They'll try to learn some sign language and speak, or some of them will just dive more deeply into just spoken and oral language. But we try to make sure they know all of their options.
Sure.
Yeah.
Could the two of you talk about how the science works?
So basically, when we evaluate someone for a cochlear implant, it's about a 2-hour evaluation day. And we go through basically how the cochlear implant works. We go through some testing with hearing aids on to determine if they're a candidate or not. So if we find through that testing they're not benefiting from their hearing aids, we move forward with that counseling. And we teach them basically the cochlear implant. The surgery is a 2-hour outpatient procedure. Nobody stays overnight. It's not as invasive. Some people come in really scared of the surgery. They think it's going to be brain surgery. It's not brain surgery. They make Dr. Volker makes one incision behind the ear in that crease and is able to move the ear, drill into that bone right there, and thread the electrode array and advance it into the cochlea.
The cochlea is the
hearing organ that's housed in the mastoid bone, which is basically
in there. Okay.
Yeah, and it's basically one of the strongest bones in your body to protect your ear. And then there's a receiver stimulator that's connected to that electrode array that just gets gently tucked underneath the skin, but over the skull, a bit above the ear and back. And then she uses dissolvable stitches to sew back the ear. They go home with some swelling, and then we can activate next day to a week after surgery. Wow. Usually we do about a week after surgery so they can, just relax from the anesthesia.
Yeah.
And they come back into my office and we turn on the implant for the first time. And between that point and the activation, we do lean on the manufacturers. Now they have classes and online support. And now we have Matilda. We're so lucky to go over, the basics of their device, how to charge the batteries, how to put it together so that when they come in for the activation, it's not so overwhelming. When I started, people would come in, they didn't have the equipment. So I brought out the equipment for them, and I laid it all on the table, and they were just, the eyes glaze over, and it's a lot. Most people don't remember more than 30% of what they hear in a doctor's appointment anyways. And it's a lot, and it's emotional. They're getting hearing back. So it's really nice that we have these meetings ahead of time for them to kind of get used to some of this stuff. And then they come in and we turn it on for the first time. We can focus on their hearing and optimizing their hearing, their mapping, instead of focusing on all the doodads and the chargers and things like that.
Yeah. So what is the implant fixing or replacing? It's not fixing the mechanical, this tiny bones in the ear, right? They're all there.
So sound normally travels through the ear canal, vibrates the eardrum, and that vibrates the little bones that are in the middle ear space. And then that stimulates the fluid in the cochlea. So that those bones stimulate fluid in that snail-shaped cochlea.
Okay.
And when that fluid moves, it stimulates little cells. They call them hair cells, but they're not really hairs. But the fluid shears those hair cells, and that creates an action potential along the auditory nerve. And that tells our brain that we're hearing sound.
And action potential is an electrical.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What an amazing structure.
Right. So when there's hearing loss, I know, it is amazing. And it's so small. It's adult size at like 24 weeks in utero. So that's why babies can hear. Yeah. And that's why the cochlear implant, people don't grow out of it. The implant, the cochlea is adult size at birth.
At 24 weeks.
Well, the hearing system, the inner ear is developed at about 24 weeks around their gestation.
That's fascinating.
And that's why babies know their mother's voice when they're born, all of that.
Makes sense.
But when there's hearing loss, those cells are damaged or not functioning. So we replace those hair cells with electrodes.
That's what you're replacing?
Yes. So we're replacing the cells with electrical contacts.
Can I say how big these things are? How big is the...
I wish I had brought our demo.
I know,
It's very thin.
Yeah,
it's very small. And Dr. Volker is like a magician. She can get it in there every time. She's amazing. And and they stay in there forever. They're very reliable. We work with all three manufacturers. They're very reliable. There's it's a very low revision rate. It happens.
Revision means go back in
and replace it.
And you've had the same one since?
No, I did not. I wanted to mention too, so when they do the surgery, it's up here you're hearing, so it's not the natural way in the ear. So I'm never using an AirPod or anything because now we are Bluetooth streaming straight into our cochlear implants.
Right.
Oh,
so
of
I'm
course.
literally hearing up here.
The cochlear implant, the outside part is called the speech processor because it literally processes speech. So it has a device that sits on the ear sort of like a hearing aid and has microphones in the same position as a hearing aid that collect the sound, and it's powered by a battery on the outside. So the sound's collected, converted into a digital signal, and it's sent up the cable to the coil piece that's held on the head by a magnet. So there's a magnet under the skin and over the skin, which aligns two coils. So the coils communicate and send the signal to the implant, which stimulates the electrodes.
And the implant's inside.
Yeah, it's right under the skin, but over the skull.
Okay.
And then there's a receiver stimulator right underneath the skin. So it receives the signal and stimulates the electrodes in the cochlea.
Okay, great. And works beautifully.
And works very well. It's really fun to work with because I know that people are going to hear better. I can pretty much usually guarantee that their hearing test will look great. Like Matilda mentioned, the part that takes time and patience and practice is understanding what you're hearing. So starting to identify speech and environmental sounds again. But I can, most of the time we can get the detection levels into a great area where they're going to hear all the sounds again, the whole spectrum.
Which is amazing to see too, because I've never really been in that journey of seeing other people get their hearing back.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so amazing to be in the clinic now and see how people are just like, I can hear, and especially when she does the exercises where they have to follow what she's saying, and they can hear, I'm like, this is so life-changing. The technology have come so far now.
So describe that exercise. You'll say something and...
So what happens during the activation is that, I do some tests on the implant to make sure it's functioning properly. And then we start mapping. So what I usually do is just turn it on globally and low and gradually increase it. And usually people say...
Globally meaning grabbing the whole
spectrum exactly
of sound?
Yes.
Okay.
So turning on the entire implant, they're hearing in a really basic map that I create. And usually, and just turning it on, making sure it's working. And the patient usually is saying, oh my gosh, I hear something in my ear. And it doesn't sound clear, but they're like, I'm hearing static or I'm hearing beeps. Sometimes a robotic voice. It just depends on the patient. And then we turn it off and we sort of fine tune it. So I'll play individual electrodes, beeps on them, basically, and we'll try to fine tune it based on loudness perception. We do other kinds of measures. It's called reflex testing, where I can play some beeps through the implant. And actually, there's a reflex in the other ear that I can measure. I know that sounds crazy. It's called electrical evoked reflexes. And they basically, I use a little probe and a machine on the one side, and then through the implant, we can stimulate different electrodes. And if there's a reflex, I can use that to shape that patient's map. And then after it's shaped and we've got a good map for the first day, as loud as I can make it and as fine-tuned as we can, we turn it on. And after a few minutes of listening and talking to the patient, I'll start just asking them some closed set tasks. So like, I'm going to say some colors so they know that it's going to be a color. And then I'll use a hoop that has a speaker material in it so that my voice can go right through it, and just start saying different colors and have them repeat me.
What the hoop is to
block my face.
Yeah. So they can't, possibility for lip reading.
Lip reading. Exactly.
And so it's
an auditory only task.
Sure. Okay.
And they can't lip read. And so starting with closed set is nice just to get them listening. And they're always really impressed because a lot of times the first day, the activation day, they can start repeating closed sets like colors, numbers, 1 through 10.
Closed sets meaning categories.
Categories, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little hard to just all of a sudden.
No, of course. You need some
everything.
Context, right?
Right. And then, it is kind of miraculous. There are some patients that walk out understanding, even though it sounds a little bit mechanical, or I've heard it sounds like, a chipmunk or something, a little high pitch. And then there's patients that walk out the door saying, all I hear is static and beeps, but, at least I'm hearing. The thing is, they all end up at their goals, even if they start, if someone has one of those magical activations versus one of those activations that are a little bit disappointing based on, what maybe they've heard other people have, they all end up at the same point. So on average, most people are meeting their goals by around 3 months after we turn on the implant. Some people sooner, some people it takes more time. Usually it just depends on the etiology of the hearing loss. So
etiology is
like the origin, the cause or the origin of their hearing loss, and also the duration of deafness. So if somebody's coming in and they have not worn hearing aids and they've not heard sound in, at a softer level or at a good level for 20 years, it's going to be harder for them to acclimate and re-stimulate the auditory pathway and the auditory cortex of the brain. There's a lot of cross-modal reorganization of the brain that occurs when you're not hearing.
I believe it, right?
Yeah.
That's the neuroplasticity, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So by wearing hearing aids, so it's a good thing for people to do, and it's a good thing to note that wearing hearing aids preps the brain and the ear for sound and keeps the neural pathways active. And people who've been wearing hearing aids consistently are more successful earlier on with a cochlear implant.
I believe that, yeah.
And it doesn't mean that someone who hasn't been wearing hearing aids can't get an implant. Of course they can. We just need to really counsel about realistic expectations, that it might take a little bit more time for them to achieve their goals.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense. So Matilda, when you hear, are you hearing like basically the way I'm hearing?
So that's a good question. So we actually spoke about that. So I can't tell how you're hearing.
Right. And I can't tell how you are.
I've been hearing, but I can tell that since I have 4 years difference in my cochlear implants, it's a very different sound from my right ear to my left ear. So that's also like telling early intervention is very important when you're getting a cochlear implant, because I hear it's very hard to explain people, because a lot of people ask me this question, how do you hear? And I'm like, I don't know how to describe it.
It's subjective.
But I can tell that my friend who also have bilateral cochlear implants, she said a very good thing, and that is on my right ear, which I got when I was 2 years, I hear colors, I hear the whole spectrum, I hear very clear. I feel like I hear everything with that on.
The earlier one.
The earlier one.
The 2-year.
Yeah.
2
And
years
then
old.
The
Okay.
one I got when I was 6, I hear still everything, but it's very black-white. It's not all the colors I hear. So
The texture,
the texture,
the range.
it's not as clear, but I still understand speech.
Of course. Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
Wow. So it's not. I thought you were going to say the opposite, that the technology got better over those years, but you're saying it's the opposite of that. It's the early
so the
intervention.
I got the thing is, the other one, the second one I got, it was when I was 6 years, so I didn't hear any sound in that ear for 6 years, which is also a long time without any sound, so my auditory nerve was not stimulated at all
Right.
for that long.
Yeah.
Especially with babies, we're developing a blueprint for speech and language in the brain. If you think about it, you're talking to babies all the time and they're developing language from the moment they're born. So if you take that ear and you deprive it all of that for 6 years, no matter what the technology is, they're still not going to do as well as doing it earlier. And that's why the age of implantation has been dropping. When you ask about sound quality, what's really interesting is that now cochlear implants are FDA approved for single-sided deafness, which means somebody's hearing drops out in one ear, but they have normal hearing in the other. So there are auditory labs, or there's like audiology labs and research facilities around the country that are doing pitch matching and sound file matching, basically, where they, because this is the first population of people who can say what normal hearing sounds like in one side and a cochlear implant in the other. The FDA approved cochlear implants for single-sided deafness in 2017. So this information is still relatively new, but we're learning more and more about what it sounds like in comparison to normal hearing because of this population.
And what are the sort of things they say? I mean, it sounds like maybe sort of what you're saying.
I don't know. I think it's very different. Like some people say they hear naturally because they hear like acoustically and electrically.
Okay.
But I think it's very different. That's also something I find very interesting is everybody hear differently.
Yeah. That's a really interesting, I mean, it's obvious now that I hear it, but you hear sort of an analog acoustically or digitally. Yeah. I think that's a helpful distinction.
It is. It's. I think for me, I think I hear naturally. So that's what I just.
And I do too. Yeah. Even
this
though
this is all she knows. For an adult who's lost their hearing gradually over time or suddenly due to a virus, it's kind of a different ballgame because they're missing something that they had before, and they have to get used to something different. And like Matilda was saying, the complement. A lot of patients now, the candidacy for cochlear implants has really expanded. So now patients with more residual hearing in the opposite ear are candidates. It used to be you had to have no hearing in both ears 20 years ago.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Why? Was it just, again, why?
Because they didn't realize how great the technology, we were just learning and being conservative. Once you get a cochlear implant, you can never go back to natural hearing.
Yeah. Oh, okay, right.
Because the electrode array destroys those hair cells in the cochlea. So we have to be really careful about, who we implant because you can't go back to wearing a hearing aid. You can't go back to natural hearing. So
okay, so there's a risk.
But it's really there. I guess they're not really because you're not there unless you're having some trouble with your hearing aid.
Yeah, risk isn't quite the right word.
Yeah. You need to know
it's
who's
permanent.
a candidate. It's permanent for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. And it's important if anyone's struggling with their hearing, even in just one ear, to go and get an evaluation. There's a lot of patients out there that have what we call like a ski slope type hearing loss, where they have really good hearing in the bass tones, the low frequencies, but then it precipitously drops to a profound mid to high frequency hearing loss. So hearing aid doesn't really help them because you're amplifying this distorted sound in the high frequencies that's really responsible for a lot of consonant sounds for speech. And you're just getting at these bass tones. So you really can't understand speech with a hearing aid on that ear. There's too much distortion. So even for those patients, we can do a cochlear implant. Dr. Volker uses soft surgical techniques to delicately thread the electrode array into the cochlea and try to actually preserve those low frequencies in the natural hearing range in the cochlea.
Soft surgical means
the least invasive possible. Basically, she's trying to keep, the fluid in the cochlea
Okay.
and maintain the hair cell functionality of the deeper part of the cochlea, and that's where the base tones are. The cochlea is 2.5 turns.
Yeah.
The inner turns send signals related to low frequency information, and the outer turns send signals related to higher frequency information. So when she inserts the electrode array, she does it really delicately to try to preserve the low frequency hearing, because it comes in from the outside turns. And then she preserves the inside turns for the natural hearing, so that when I activate the patient, I can actually modify the speech processor, the part worn on the outside, to be part hearing aid and part electrical hearing through the cochlear implant.
Oh, wow. Okay, I get it now.
Yes.
I get it now. You're still using some of the natural structure for one part of the spectrum.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So the moral of the story is, if someone's struggling with their hearing aids, even if you're surprised that because they have some good hearing in some part of the frequency range, they should still get evaluated so they know their options. And by the way, coming in for a cochlear implant evaluation doesn't mean we're rushing you off to surgery. It's collecting information about your health so you know all your options. You never have to we never pressure patients to move forward. We just, we can always say, oh, let's reevaluate in 6 months or a year if they're not ready.
Yeah.
But it's always good to find out what your options are and know more about the technology.
A lot of people are not educated about cochlear implants. So we are also, I think the CI evals or the cochlear implant evaluations are really good, so they can spread their words out in the community so more people can get to know about it. That's kind of also why I wanted to work in this field, because people are like, what's that on your ear? Like, they think it's something I hear music on, or they're like, is that a hearing aid? I'm like, I actually don't have any hearing when I don't have this on. And they're like, wow, how? So I feel here in America, a lot of people think it's a brain surgery, and it's not. It's
just a little tiny hole, right?
It's like a little tiny surgery.
Yeah.
So I'm also hoping to spread more awareness and educate people about it.
That's terrific. You mentioned that you have Bluetooth enabled.
It's amazing.
And talk about that. Like, what can you do with that? Everything that.
So
it's like having really good AirPods. Or
it is.
Okay.
I think it's even better for AirPods for you guys who are normal hearing. So the technology, as you said, just expand over the last 20 years. So when I was little, I had a big backpack on my back. With cables up to my ear, and the cochlear this outside processor was big. So the technology is just expanding a lot for even now they're getting smaller and smaller,
of course,
and better. So I didn't have Bluetooth early on in my life. So now when I'm walking, running, doing, if I want to speak with my family from home, they just go straight into my cochlear implants.
Perfect.
And people, I can tell when I'm going out for a walk, people are looking at me and they think, are you speaking to the ear, or where are you speaking?
Because they don't even see the AirPod, which we all thought was so weird 20 years ago. It's like, that person doesn't have a phone next to their ear. So,
So, also when I'm out running, for example, I just have my phone with me and it just goes straight to my cochlear implants.
And now these cochlear implants also have apps. Yeah. So back in the day, we didn't have, we didn't have smartphones, but now it started with a remote control and then moved into an app, and patients have some autonomy. They can control the levels of the sound. They can control different features. And then for parents with children who have cochlear implants, they can even look at the wear time. It'll beep, their phone will beep if it falls off. And for the longest time, like Matilda was saying, was body-worn processors. And now it's up to the ear.
Okay, so this right, pointing to a small device behind your ear right now.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know, it looks like the size of a hearing aid, or...
Yeah.
That was how big, and it was in a backpack? That's what the backpack size thing has come down to. Is that right?
I mean, backpack is maybe too... I don't... Yeah. It was a little backpack you had on your back, and it was like a little, backpack.
Like a little, with a small...
yes, and then it has
Walkman size thing?
Batteries in the little backpack, which had long cables from my back up to my ear.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's definitely getting smaller, and now we have different types of processors too. So it's very exciting how they now also make some off the ear option. So this is the one I have is one type, but they also make another one.
So they have one that's all the equipment, like the processor, the battery, the magnet, the coils, all in what looks like a big button, and it just sits on the magnet site. So your microphones aren't necessarily closer to your ear, but some people, especially I noticed during the pandemic, they needed a break from things sitting on their ears. They've got glasses, they've got masks. So it was nice. And at our center, we have contracts with all 3 manufacturers that every patient gets 2 processors for 1 ear. So you always have a backup. So you can always have a different style if you want as well.
Incredible to have, because I don't have that. I don't have.
Not every center has it. One other fun thing that, especially for adults too, but especially for kids, they're waterproof now. These kids can hear in the water. They can go to swim lessons. They can talk and enjoy bath time with their parents.
And again, all of this change on the outside, as long as you plug into the existing internal structure, which sounds amazing.
The implant companies have done an excellent job at not leaving anyone behind. So,
right, because that's what it is, right?
So your implant that you get now, basically, at least in the U.S., usually insurance companies will provide an upgrade every 5 years on the outside part.
Yeah.
And the companies make sure that they're compatible to the older implants, so you don't have to get another surgery, and you can benefit from new technology every 5 years.
That's amazing.
It's really wonderful, because these patients, I see some legacy patients that, some of the clinics I've worked at were some of the first implant centers, and they've kind of followed me over to P&I. And so they've had implants since the beginning. And they also had like the body worn processor. And the issue with, the thing that's made it even smaller is batteries, right? Batteries have gotten smaller and more efficient. So now we can power these systems better. The mapping process has gotten more streamlined. So back in the day, patients came in like 9 times, 12 times, something crazy per year, because we didn't know how often they needed to come in, and mapping was a lot more complicated. But now we know that maps sort of stabilize, and we really have a pretty efficient process now. Patients only really need to come in 3 times in the first 3 months, and then once a year. And that works for 80% of people.
That's amazing. When you say mapping, how are you talking to?
I have a computer that has the cochlear implant software on it, and there's different software for each manufacturer. And then there's some sort of interface that I can connect to the cochlear implant processor through. So nowadays, which has been wonderful for audiologists over the last 10, 20 years, is that it's gone wireless. So I used to have a cable connected to the computer that went up to the ear, but now I can program completely wireless. And then with the computer right in front of me, and I can do so many things. I can check and do tests on the electrodes. I can measure different parameters that will help that patient get better.
This makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And now we have apps.
So in the app, you have different features too. So she can go into the more details, but for me, it's very beneficial they have some accessories too. So now we have TV streamer too, and we have a little mini mic or watcher or whatever. The different companies have different accessories, but in my manufacturer, we have a little mini mic where my family or my friends, they can have it, and then they can speak straight up to my cochlear implants.
Oh, that's so cool.
So this helps the noiser at a distance. So like teachers use them in school, so they can talk to the children with hearing loss. And
also a fun thing that Dr. Lewis, she learned me, was that I travel a lot from Denmark to America, and I never really watch movies on the airplane because I don't really hear through AirPods. But now the mini mic has a cable that goes into the airplane screening, and then it goes straight to my cochlear implants. So now I hear very clear.
So technology has it's
definitely, but I would also say throughout my life, I really didn't think that much about my cochlear implants. I haven't really been using as much as I could.
As a tool,
as much as I love this device, I also it's a part of me.
Yeah.
So I don't really look that much into the features and the accessories. I'm literally just taking it on in the morning, and then I charge the batteries in the night. So that's also what I kind of wanted to tell the patients too. You can either go that way where you try all the different maps, the programming, all those things, but I love to keep it simple and just wear it and hear and then live my life.
Access to good programs has always been hard. I've always had patients that have driven in up to 5 hours away, flown in, because there's not that many cochlear implant centers. So P&I is so important that we've created a new program in Los Angeles. We live in one of the biggest cities in the country, if not the world, and we've only had a few centers. So it's really great that we're improving access. But also, some of these all of the manufacturers are really working on this, but we can do remote programming. This morning, my first visit was a programming visit through the patient's app on their phone. And I was able to fix some parameters of their programming to help them hear better from their home. And they would have had to drive 3 hours, pay a fortune for parking, and then drive 3 hours home.
I knew you were going to say this.
Yes.
This is terrific. That's pacemakers, right? They can do that remotely.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same idea, right?
They can as well, by the way.
They can now?
The technology was there in hearing aids even in 2020. I remember doing that a lot with kids during the pandemic.
I bet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It must have been a lifesaver.
Oh, yeah.
What do you hear from people in your age group? We were talking about that age group before. What do you hear from them when they first, adopt this technology, when they first get cochlear implants? What are some of the things that just come up?
I mean, they say the same as me, that they're just so happy that they're able to live a normal life, that a lot of people think that cochlear implants are limiting your life. That's also when they come in the clinic, they're asking, can I travel with my cochlear implant? Can I go hiking? Can I bike? Can I swim? I'm like, you can do all of it. That's why I think all in my age are in the same boat as me. We all are it's a part of us, but it's not something we really think about that much.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we want in technology, right?
Exactly. And I must say that in the beginning, when I started working at P&I, I was a little scared because I really never spoke that much about cochlear implants. Also, I have 3 older siblings who are all normal hearing. My whole family is normal hearing. I'm the only one who has hearing loss. So it was a very, very big change in our family. So when I started working here, my parents were also like, wait, is that Matilda who wants to work with cochlear implants? I just think that now I'm just so happy that I was born at that time where the technology is so advanced.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Whereas if I was my sister, who is 8 years older than me, I wouldn't have been able to get cochlear implants at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, again, technology is so on your side here.
Very. And I learned new things about it every day, which is incredible.
Yeah, I'm sure it's just moving. One final thing is it's so fortunate that they're allowing people to get these devices earlier and earlier, right? Because we talked about how important that is because of the way of the brain plasticity. Is that because people are starting to they see the promise and the risks are becoming, maybe they're relearning that the risks are really not a big deal? And is there also a cost component or no?
That's a good question. So the surgery has become a lot less invasive. There used to be a shaving half the head, a big C-shaped incision that's cutting through a lot more, a little bit more recovery. Now it's a really small surgery, or it's a much less invasive surgery where people heal so quickly. We used to make people wait a month to get their activation. And now we can do next day, same day, or we try to do the least invasive surgery.
Well, that's P&I's.
Yeah. There's a plethora of research out there that shows the speech therapy, the auditory therapy, all of that is necessary for children after they get a cochlear implant. However, the earlier that they get access to sound, they catch up to their peers so much faster. There's a lot less on the back end, sort of, and the cost of that intervention goes much, much further down. It's much more depressed when we get kids implanted early. If we're trying to catch kids up to their normal hearing peers when they get implanted late, it's actually more cost effective to implant these children younger. And it's better for their brain development. It's easier on the family. It's easier on the child. They're not learning their first language, not second language, but their first language, and developing a blueprint for language at 2 or 6. They're learning it. They're only deprived sound, or they're only without sound for 5 months, 6 months instead of years. It's almost the same. And with adults, it's really important to act early because we know that hearing loss, treating hearing loss properly is the number one modifiable risk factor for cognitive decline. And that's why Dr. Volker and I were recruited over to PNI to start this program, because we know how important hearing is to aging and to cognition and preventing dementia as you get older. So if hearing aids aren't giving you benefit, it's great that you're wearing a hearing device and you should keep doing it to keep the brain stimulated to some degree,
Sure.
but it's not properly giving you access to communication and to, and these older patients, we see them, it's so sad. I mean, we all have grandparents, and I was really close to mine, and seeing, I was lucky that they didn't retreat. They were very social, but you see these patients that had these vibrant lives, very social, they want to engage, but they start to disengage, and they stop asking what even, because they don't want to annoy anybody.
I saw that with my mother.
Yeah. And it really affects the family. And we're
crushing.
Really identifying the, just like with other illness, the family is affected as much sometimes as the individual, because they miss that person. It's really hard for them. They're their translator for all doctor's appointments, or, they're, and nobody wants to be a burden. So it's really giving people their life back. It's magical to see these activations on babies, of course, but some of these older patients, or even patients that suddenly lost their hearing, it's so special, and they really do well so quickly, like we talked about, within around 3 months, because they have the blueprint of language in their brain. They just need access to it again.
Certainly.
Yeah. So it's still important to act early for older adults too, not just for children.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. This is terrific. This is fascinating stuff. Yeah. There's a New Yorker article in here.
Oh,
sure. No, there is. All right. Well, let's do this again, because in a year there'll be even more to talk about.
Cool.
Right? There'll be more developments, and things will be getting even better and better. The best is yet to come. It sounds like, and this is terrific. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much.